Hello, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's webinar, where we are launching the EU-wide guidelines on gender-neutral job evaluation and classification. My name is Georgie Bradley. I'm a spokesperson for the European Institute for Gender Equality, and I'll be your lead moderator today. It's a pleasure to welcome you to what is a highly anticipated webinar event. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're really delighted to have such a diverse group of participants with us this morning, including employers, human resource professionals, trade union representatives, workers' representatives, policymakers, gender equality practitioners from across the EU. So your presence here really does demonstrate your commitment to achieving equal pay between women and men and promoting gender equality in the workplace. So super grateful to have your participation with us today. So before we begin, I'd like to draw your attention to a few important housekeeping points that you can see on the screen. First, please note that this session is being recorded and it will be available on EIGE's website after the webinar. So you'll be able to revisit the content at any time. Trust and believe, it's going to be very, very rich. So I'm sure you'll be wanting to revisit and take your notes all over again. So by all means, if you do need to step away during the session for a moment or two, you won't be missing anything. So indeed, we also very much welcome your questions and comments throughout the session. So please feel free to post your comments in the Slido at any time. You see the QR code there, get your phones out. We do have a dedicated time for a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, where we'll address as many of your queries and questions as possible. With what time we don't have, we will be answering those questions and uploading the answers to our events website. So you'll see that we'll have some also interactive polls as well to get your take and opinions at a certain point during the webinar, but I will be guiding you through this at all times. But all of that is for later. So let's get right into it. It's my great pleasure to first and foremost invite Maruša Gortnar, who is the head of the Research and Policy Support Unit at the European Institute for Gender Equality, to deliver the opening remarks for today's webinar. Maruša, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Georgie, and very good morning to everyone joining us today. On behalf of the European Institute for Gender Equality, it's a real pleasure to welcome such a diverse audience committed to advancing gender equality workplaces across the EU. And it's wonderful to see such strong interest. We have over 800 participants registered for join us today. As many of you know, the gender pay gap remains one of the most persistent challenges we face. Still, it stands at 11% in the European Union. And while many factors contribute to it, one issue consistently stands out: how we value work. Care, coordination, emotional labor, responsibility for people. This is real work, and it is still too often overlooked or undervalued. Gender-neutral job evaluation is a powerful way to correct this. By assessing skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions in a structured and objective way, we can evaluate the job itself, not the worker, not the assumptions about who usually performs that job. This makes invisible work visible and ensures that jobs and equal value are recognized as such. And this is exactly the purpose of the updated European Union-wide guidelines on gender-neutral job evaluation and classification we are presenting today. Together with the European Commission, EIGE has translated these guidelines into a practical, step-by-step toolkit designed to support organizations of all sizes, whether they are just starting out or building on existing job evaluation systems. For organizations, gender-neutral job evaluation is both a safeguard and a competitive advantage. This is not only about compliance. Yes, gender-neutral job evaluation reduces risks of costly legal claims, and it also helps attract and retain top talent. It boosts workers' motivation and strengthens the organization's reputation as a fair employer. Most importantly, it unlocks the full potential of the workforce, driving competitiveness, innovation, and productivity. For workers and social partners, it offers a transparent, shared framework to support dialogue and address pay inequalities. This is why today's webinar will walk you through the toolkit structure, explain its key principles, and demonstrate how it can be used in practice to assess the value of jobs and build fair, transparent, and gender-neutral pay structures. Thank you all again for joining us today, for the work you do, and we hope you will leave today feeling informed, equipped, and inspired to take this important step toward equal pay for work of equal value between women and men.
Thank you so much, Maruša, for giving us the top highlights on why this work is so important and so important for now. This is a very timely webinar. So I'm very delighted to now hand over to the European Commission. I'm pleased to give the floor to Pinuccia Contino, who's the head of the Gender Equality Unit in DG Justice. Pinuccia, over to you. Pinuccia, you're currently on mute. There you go.
Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry because I had a problem with my connection, so I'm taking over from my iPhone.
Not a problem. We have you here. Go ahead.
That's great.
Oh, you're on mute again. There you go.
This?
Yeah, you're perfect. Go
Is
ahead.
it working?
Yeah,
okay.
It's working now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And good morning from a very sunny Brussels. The principle of equal pay for equal work or work of equal value has been at the core of EU law for decades. It has been in the treaties from the start. Yet the persistence of pay inequalities shows that more robust and transparent systems are needed to make this principle a reality for everybody. And this is precisely the aim of the Pay Transparency Directive. It strengthens workers' rights to understand how pay is set, and it requires employers to build their pay structures on clear, objective, and gender-neutral criteria. These criteria, skills, effort, responsibility, and working conditions are the basis for ensuring that jobs of equal value are treated equally, regardless of workers' sex. The directive does not prescribe a single method for job evaluation. However, systematic and gender-neutral job evaluation and classification systems are the most reliable way for employers to demonstrate that their pay structures comply with the law and are free of bias. They allow organizations to map, compare, and justify differences in job value in a transparent and consistent way, enhancing employers' reputation, reducing the risk of discrimination, and thus saving unnecessary litigation costs. This is why the European Commission, together with EIGE, has updated the EU-wide guidelines and produced the toolkit we are presenting today. It translates the legal requirements of the directive into practical, ready-made, step-by-step support for employers, workers, and social partners. Whether your organization is large or small, public or private, new to job evaluation, or refining an existing system, this resource will help you build pay structures that are fair, transparent, and defensible. We are delighted to share it with you today, and we look forward to supporting your implementation efforts. We're really happy to see that so many of you have joined the call, and I can assure you that the Commission will make sure the toolkit is translated in all official languages of the EU to make sure it can be used by all employers in every member state. Thank you again for being here today. We are looking forward to an engaging and productive session, and we hope you'll find the toolkit to be a valuable resource in your work towards gender equality and reaching equal pay for everybody. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Maruša, and thank you so much, Pinuccia. Now that the webinar has been officially anointed with those opening reflections, let me take us back a little bit to the drawing board, looking at our agenda. We've structured the session to build your knowledge progressively. We're going to start by outlining the legal and policy basis for the updated EU-wide guidelines on gender-neutral job evaluation and classification, then explain what gender-neutral job evaluation means and why it's vital for achieving equal pay for work of equal value between women and men. Next, we'll look at why gender-neutral job evaluation matters in practice for organizations, workers, and social partners. Then we'll give you an overview of the toolkit structure, showing you how it's organized and how to navigate it. Then we're going to walk you through all 10 tools in the toolkit, after which we will be wrapping up. We'll have a question and answer session where, like I said, you have the opportunity to ask anything you like about the toolkit. You'll be able to submit those questions via Slido that we shared earlier. And then by the end of this webinar, we all hope you'll be feeling equipped to begin the gender-neutral job evaluation process in your organization using the toolkit's guidance, so you leave informed and ready to go. So with that, let's start from the foundations with our first speaker, who will provide you with the essential context on the legal framework which underpins all of this. So I'm really excited and delighted to introduce our first speaker, Agnieszka Bielska Decugniere, who is the Equal Pay Team Leader in DG Justice at the European Commission. So Agnieszka, could you kind of outline and explain how the Pay Transparency Directive establishes requirements for the assessment of work of equal value and what this means for employers across the EU?
Yes, welcome everybody. Good morning. So first of all, let me start with highlighting the fundamental principle and the legal obligation we are working towards. So we talk here about equal pay for equal work or work of equal value between women and men. So as Pinuccia said, this is one of the EU funding principles enshrined in the treaty since the very creation of the European Union. Namely, this is Article 157 of the Treaty on Functioning of the European Union. Now, what I wanted to highlight here is that this principle goes beyond the equal pay for the same work or same job, if you wish. It also recognizes that different jobs can have comparable value based on their characteristics. So these jobs can be basically different in nature, or they can appear to be different, but in fact, they might be worth the same. So to give you an example, in, for instance, care home or residential care facility for elderly people, a care worker and a maintenance technician, they're doing completely different work. But when we assess skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions involved in these jobs, we might find that these jobs are of equal value. And here it is where the gender-neutral job evaluation comes into play. It is like a great tool to help organizations to assess the value of work. It provides you with a systematic framework for comparing different jobs objectively, and therefore helps you to free your pay structure from pay discrimination and bias. Next slide, please. So first, what the pay transparency requires. It establishes several key requirements for employers, and these requirements include transparency on pay, but also on criteria to set pay. And larger organizations will be required to do the gender pay reporting, including by categories of workers. And second, and this is where the gender-neutral job evaluation can help, the directive requires that the pay structures in organizations respect the equal pay for the same work of equal value, and that they are based on objective and gender-neutral criteria. This takes into account the existing case law of Court of Justice, and based on this case law, the directive specifies that the criteria to be taken into account by organizations must include these four main factors that you might be hearing often today: skills, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. Now, the directive does not mandate a specific method or tool in that respect, so employers have full flexibility in how they demonstrate that their pay structures meet these requirements and respect equal pay. But of course, gender-neutral job evaluation classification systems can help organizations in demonstrating that they are compliant with the EU law. And it is, in our view, the most established and robust method for doing so, as it provides a clear basis and systematic way for setting gender-neutral pay structures.
Agnieszka, if I could slip in for one moment and question, because I'm sure many of our participants today may be hearing the term gender neutral job evaluation for the first time, or may have encountered it before, but have not fully understood what makes it different from other forms of job evaluations. Could you explain what gender neutral job evaluation is, and crucially, how it addresses gender bias in pay systems?
Yes, so what I said, gender-neutral job evaluation is basically a systematic process that allows an organization to determine the value of jobs. So what is absolutely critical here is to understand that we are evaluating the job itself and what it requires. So we are not evaluating the person who happens to be doing it. We are not assessing individual performance, nor personal characteristic of workers. We're instead looking at what the job demands are, and we're doing this based on objective bias-free criteria. So in the end, the outcome of this process provides a clear and transparent basis for classifying the roles in your organization and then preparing a pay structure. And jobs that will score similarly across the criteria will be grouped into pay grades, and it will create you the rational and defensible structure for compensation decisions. The Pay Transparency Directive, as I said already before, refers to the four main criteria intended to determine the value of job or a position in any organizations. And these are, as you see on the slide, skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. These four criteria form the foundation of the updated EU guidelines that we are presenting you today, and we aim that it will help you with practical implementation in the organization. So first, for instance, concerning skills, in practical terms, it can encompass knowledge, abilities, and experience required to perform a job. Second, responsibility can mean accountability for people, but it can also involve a responsibility for resources and information, or responsibility for safety and well-being of others, or management of budget and equipment, handling sensitive or confidential information. These can be all forms of responsibility that can be recognized and valued. Then, third, as it concerns effort, the guidance acknowledges that effort can come in multiple forms. So it can mean physical demands, but also mental demands, including concentration, decision-making, problem-solving, and emotional demands. And last, when it comes to the working conditions, this can cover both physical and psychological environment in which the job is performed. So it can cover exposure to noise, heat, cold, other physical risks. It can involve working irregular or shift hours, spending time traveling between locations. These are all the conditions that might matter for evaluating job value. So to conclude, by systematically assessing every job against all these four factors and ensuring that we're capturing the full range of demands within each factor, we create a truly gender-neutral evaluation framework.
Thank you so much, Agnieszka. I think we've covered a lot of the what and the why ground. So I think now we can take a step further and look into why is this worth it. So I'd like to turn now to Marianna Baggio, who is the research officer at Eurofound. Marianna, I want to ask you, hello, good morning. I want to ask you, organizations would often ask, well, why should we do this? Could you outline, beyond legal compliance, what does the evidence tell us about the benefits of gender neutral job evaluation for employers, workers, and social partners alike?
Thank you very much, Georgie, for this very important question. I think that quite often we stop exactly at what is the benefit. It's just that I'm legally compliant. But actually looking at gender neutral job evaluation, going through the process, really achieving the goal of, addressing pay inequalities is going to lead to a lot of benefits for everybody involved. And we are going to start with employers, which are the ones that are going to have to implement this in the first basis. And they might ask, okay, so why am I doing this? What's in here for me behind being legally compliant? And there is a lot. First of all, we are going to have what we call talent attraction and retention, because in increasingly competitive labor markets, especially for younger workers and also for women, having a transparent and fair pay practice is a significant differentiator for companies. So workers, as I said, especially women and the younger generations, are more likely to join and stay within organizations that demonstrate objective and fair pay systems. It means that we are going to reduce the cost of replacing our employees, which is typically something between 50 and 200% of our annual salary for an individual. It means cutting this cost. It means retaining our people. Getting pay that is right, it's simply good business because we attract and retain our talent in our companies. And then we are also managing what we call the legal and reputational risks around not doing this, because with the Pay Transparency Directive now in force, and with enforcement mechanism becoming a reality, organizations that don't have a defensible pay structure are going to face growing exposure to claims and to reputational issues. So having this is also good for the reputation of the company, and it protects you, and it's something good to have in advance of anything coming forward. And then we have gender neutral job evaluation overall being a good risk management tool. And a third thing is that we are going to improve our organizational efficiency through supporting HR planning. So our research has shown that the process of systematically reviewing jobs frequently reveals maybe some pay structures that are outdated, maybe roles that are unclear, the boundaries of the roles that are not really there, inconsistencies that once we address through the process of implementing gender neutral pay structures really lead to a better workforce planning and resource allocations. This is really about efficiency, and it's really, really important. And it forces organizations to think clearly about what they actually need, also in terms of skills. It reviews the responsibility, the working conditions, the effort that are required. So it really helps us looking into what we are doing. And then it's also about productivity and engagement of the workers, because it's clear by the literature that when workers perceive pay systems that are fair and transparent, the job satisfaction and the organizational commitment really, really increase. So when you do this right, you're really going to make your workers feel that your approach to pay setting is fair, is transparent, and is going to lead to high-performing organizations on a foundation that is really about being a fair employer. But not only for workers, we really look at having the information that up to now it's really been missing. So for workers, the benefits are equally clear. Gender neutral job evaluations gives you the transparency of how your work is evaluated and how it pay is determined. It really creates what we call an objective pathway for understanding your pay structure. And most importantly, of course, it addresses systemic undervaluation of work predominantly performed by women. So it really gives you an idea of where you should invest in terms of your skills, developing your responsibility, your working conditions, your effort. You know how you're valued, and you know how to increase your value for the company, bringing in even more. So for workers that have the right to request information on their individual pay and the average pay levels broken down by sex for categories of worker performing the same work as them or work of equal value, it's also giving them the information that they need for themselves, to compare themselves to others, and to really be better equipped to engage with pay discussions with their employers, but also to invest and move forward in their career. So it's both a benefit for the individual to develop and look forward, and to compare him or herself to others, and then eventually address that if needed. And then we have also social partners that have really a number of advantages in engaging with gender neutral pay structures. And this is where I would like to spend a moment, because this is where we have concentrated our research here at Eurofound, because it's something that we've seen. It's really, really important, and to an extent maybe underdeveloped. Just to remind you that 60% of workers across Europe are covered by some form of collective agreement. So a lot here can be done, because trade unions and workers' representative gender-neutral job evaluation really offers a framework to negotiate for pay decisions free from gender bias. It's really important because it strengthens collective bargaining by embedding equal pay principles directly into collective agreement. Rather than fighting individual cases, we really look at how unions can reshape the architecture of pay itself. So it's really about strengthening the core of collective agreements and bargaining. And for employer organizations that as well are very important, it really provides a common evidence-based language for describing jobs across member organizations. So it's a collective reflection here as well, which is really valuable in sectoral bargaining. And it helps organizations also anticipate and adapt to shifting skills and demands. It's really about being current in our understanding of what is the value of different jobs. But here is where the challenges come from our research. So many social partner organizations, both employers and trade unions, sometimes might lack the technical capacity to engage fully with these processes. And reviewing and updating job classifications, however complex, it's an investment that is really worth doing. And the guidelines that we're going to see today are going to be really helpful for both in order to really embrace this kind of approach in a full manner, and really get the best out of the Pay Transparency Directive and this requirement of the Pay Transparency Directive, because it really helps at company level in collective agreements for employees, for employers to get to the very core of really making sure that we can evaluate jobs for what they really are in terms of skill, responsibility, working conditions, and effort.
Thank you, Marianna, for providing us with such a comprehensive overview of the not just benefits, but the tangible benefits of gender-neutral job evaluation. It's quite a compelling case for action, I think. But naturally, the next question that comes up is, well, how do we do it? So the updated EU-wide guidelines we're presenting today are designed as a practical, actionable toolkit that aims to bridge the gap between the legal requirements and practical implementation of gender-neutral job evaluation and classification. So now I'm delighted to ask Elena Anchevska, who's a researcher in gender mainstreaming here at the European Institute for Gender Equality, about the toolkit itself. Hi, Elena. Could you tell us, how was this toolkit developed and what does it contain? Nice, broad and open. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Georgie, and thanks to everyone joining us today. To develop this toolkit, which serves as the updated EU-wide guidelines, we explored the best available resources out there. What we did is to look into practices in countries leading the way in this process, and this included several member states such as Spain, Belgium, Finland, and Sweden. And we also looked at beyond the EU, at countries such as the UK, Iceland, and New Zealand, where gender-neutral job evaluation is well established. We analyzed more than 30 resources on gender-neutral job evaluation and classification. We collected the evidence through desk research, and we also conducted more than 50 interviews with EU-level social partners and national stakeholders, among which experts and also employers themselves, to ensure that the toolkit reflects real-world needs and challenges. We then conducted a consultation of the draft toolkit with EU, national, and international stakeholders, and we also tested the draft toolkit with employers. And here I want to take a moment and emphasize that we are very grateful for all the feedback that we have received. It really helped us refine the tools. The result of this process is a comprehensive, user-friendly toolkit that provides flexible guidance which is adaptable to organizations of all sizes and sectors. So, who is the toolkit actually designed for? The primary users are employers. This includes both private entities and also public institutions across all sectors. A key feature of the toolkit is that it works for organizations of any size. So whether you're a very small organization with less than 10 workers, or you're a large employer with hundreds and thousands of staff, there is a pathway in this toolkit designed specifically for you. It's also designed to meet you where you are. So you can use the toolkit whether you're completely new to job evaluation, or if you already have a system in place and you want to refine it and make sure that it's gender neutral. Now, beyond employers, the toolkit supports workers in understanding fair pay, social partners in informed dialogue, equality bodies in assessing the value of work, policymakers in implementing the Pay Transparency Directive, and practitioners in their day-to-day work. In short, the toolkit is designed for everyone involved in shaping, negotiating, implementing, and scrutinizing job evaluation and pay structures. In essence, it creates a shared language and a shared methodology, which helps all actors move in the same direction towards ensuring equal pay for work of equal value between women and men. And now we will see briefly what the toolkit provides. So, at the heart of the toolkit, there are 8 practical tools for employers. Tool 0 helps organizations recognize and prevent gender bias. And tools 1 to 7 guide employers step by step throughout the whole job evaluation process, from setting up the foundation to evaluating jobs and to developing a fair and transparent pay structure. In addition to the tools for employers, the toolkit also includes 2 dedicated tools. One is for trade unions and another one is for workers, but both are designed to support social dialogue. These tools help to engage constructively with employers, to ask the right questions, and to better understand how jobs are valued and paid. And this is key for building trust and transparency. A core element of the toolkit is the factor and sub-factor plan. This plan defines the 4 main criteria or factors that we already mentioned, and these include skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. And then it breaks them down into sub-factors. This helps not only to ensure consistency, but also to make the process easier to follow. In addition, the toolkit also provides practical templates that support smooth implementation, including templates such as job description templates or interview guides, and also it includes case studies. These case studies show how fictional organizations use the tools in practice. We have also provided video tutorials that guide you throughout the whole process, and we have included supporting Excel files, and these are key because they help to simplify the scoring and ensure consistent calculations, which then influences the burden that company has. The aim is to reduce the burden, especially for smaller organizations. Then what you see on the slide is the employer's journey in the toolkit. To make it easier to navigate, the toolkit is structured around this clear employer journey, from preparation to action to follow-up. And these are the 3 stages which are highlighted on the slide: prepare, act, and follow-up. This matches the toolkit step-by-step flow. So organizations start by getting ready and setting up the process. Then they evaluate jobs and establish a pay structure. And finally, they make sure that the results are applied fairly over time. So in the prepare phase, the toolkit focuses on understanding gender bias. This is tool 0. Then getting started, planning and bringing the right people on board. This is tool 1. And then gathering job information and creating job profiles. This is tool 2. Next is the act stage. This is actually where jobs are evaluated and a pay structure is created. And this is supported through tools 3, 4, and 5. Each of these tools is tailored to the size and complexity of the organization. I will tell you more about this on the next slide. And in the follow-up phase, we focus on applying the results, including adjusting the job titles, which is tool 6, and then tracking progress over time. This is tool 7. So the toolkit recognizes that organizations do not have the same complexity, capacity, and resources. So this is why the job evaluation tools are tailored to the organizational size and context. And this is why we have developed 3 pathways. They are designed to keep the process manageable and effective for everyone. You see the 3 pathways on the slide. First, micro-organizations. This is for with organizations with less than 10 workers, with less than 10 roles, and usually there is no dedicated HR department or team, but the HR capacities are assumed by typically by the owner or the manager. And for them, we use a simplified approach and a method called graduated factor comparison. Then small and medium-sized organizations from 10 to 249 workers, suitable for organizations with a relatively similar jobs and limited HR capacity. Here, we also use a simplified approach and employ a peer comparison method. And finally, there is a pathway for large organizations with more than 250 workers. This is what we call the standard approach, which relies on a comprehensive analytical point factor method. It's the most robust approach. In any case, the key message is this: the toolkit helps you choose an approach that fits within your reality, while still keeping the evaluation gender neutral and relying on the 4 factors: skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. And finally, a practical point on access. The toolkit is available in 2 formats. You can explore the web version of the toolkit online. This is the simpler and more accessible version. And you can also download the full PDF document from EIGE's website. This is the comprehensive document, and everything that you need is there. The detailed guidelines, all the tools, the templates, and the materials. A quick note, we already noticed in slide that there are some questions. The toolkit is available, so the guidelines are already available on EIGE's website. You're free to explore them, and we hope that you will use them and that you will find them useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena, for providing the brief overview of the toolkit, but still very kind of concrete and comprehensive. So now we're moving into the most interactive part of the session, where we're going to get a bit more hands-on, or rather you are. We're taking you from explanation to experience, meaning we really encourage you to participate fully in the activities we'll be doing together. So to guide us through this next part, I'm really pleased to welcome Giovanni Razzu, who is one of the 2 experts who were part of the project team closely involved in developing the toolkit. So Giovanni, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So first we are going to compare 2 specific jobs, and we will ask you about your perceptions of these jobs. In particular, we will compare a shop assistant with a warehouse operative. And both jobs, of course, can be found within the same supermarket. So we are going to do this in several steps. And so let's begin with the first question. So here you can see our 2 jobs displayed side by side. We have a shop worker who assists customers, and we have a warehouse worker who handles goods and stock. So the first question, based on your initial impression, which job do you think should be placed in a higher job grade and therefore receive a higher pay? Or do you think, for instance, that they should be based on the same grades? So I can see you are starting to vote using the Slido, the QR code. Again, we leave you some time for this activity. And the votes are coming in nicely. See, still coming in. Another 10 seconds before we move on to the second activity. But still 120 votes coming in. So quite interesting results in many ways. And 60 still coming in. A few more seconds so we can then proceed with the second question for you. Yes, so the second question is about comparing these jobs more systematically across several factors. So let's start with physical effort. So as you can see, the question is, which job requires more physical effort? Think about here about, considering tasks such as lifting, carrying, or standing for long periods, okay? So please vote. We'll have 35 seconds for this. Okay, so now we can move to the third factor, next factor, and that is about the emotional and psychological effort. So consider the emotional demands for each of the role, such as managing emotions, dealing with distress, or resolving interpersonal conflict. You can see you started voting, thank you. Now we can move to the fourth factor, and that is about the working environment. Here you can think about both the physical and psychological conditions, so the exposure to noise, temperature, chemicals, or harassment, or working in situations of crisis. Please vote. Okay, we can move on to the next one, which is the qualifications, the level of qualification. So which jobs do you think requires a higher level of qualification? Here, think about the formal education, the training requirements. So please vote. Some more votes coming in. Let's see whether we reach around the yes, 170. Thank you. So we can move on to the other factor, which is the level of planning and organizational skills. So again, which jobs do you think requires a higher level of planning and organizational skills? More votes. Very interesting. Similar. And now the next one, which is the level of interpersonal and communication skills. Again, which job you think requires a higher level of interpersonal and communication skills, please? Yeah, very interesting. Quite strong majority here. Okay, thank you. And finally, our final factor, which is about the level of responsibility. So which job do you think requires a highest level of responsibility? Here, things about the accountability for the outcomes, the safety and well-being of others, also the impact of the decisions made. Please vote. Interesting. Strong majority for equal evaluation here. Quite balanced, the rest. Okay, thank you. We have reached a similar number of respondents as well. So we can, now I want to ask you, just take a moment to reflect on all of these. So think back again to the very first question you had, where you asked which job you think should be in a higher paid, higher grade. And now, do you think that, you know, going through all of these factors one by one, what guided you in the first vote, whether you had a difference, you know, whether your thinking shifted, what influenced that change? Now submit your reflection again using Slido. We'll give again a couple of minutes for that, please. You see results coming in. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay. Both coming in. Let's reach slightly larger numbers. Instinct, no, very interesting. Okay, thank you, thank you. I think there are some quite interesting, insightful reflections here, in particular about, you know, the possibility to evaluate the demands. You know, quite a few say that they didn't change the views that expressed in the initial question, but I think this is very, very important, typical exercise, really. You know, what we see is that the initial evaluations often, you know, favor some roles which are more stereotypically associated with men, while others break down, when we break down the jobs factor by factor, we really think about exactly what each role demands. And therefore we start to see this complexity and how it adds value to the work that we might have initially think it overlooked. So for instance, when you take the shopper worker role, this we know that requires strong interpersonal and communication skills, constant interaction with customers, attention to detail, and the ability to manage multiple tasks at the same time, often actually under very you know, time pressure. It also demands emotional effort in dealing with difficult customers, responsibility for handling money and stock, and also the physical effort actually from standing for long hours or lifting goods. But often some of this work can be really undervalued and taken for granted because it's associated with traits that are seen naturally as being feminine, such as helpfulness, patience, care, rather than recognize the skill and demanding work and effort. And that is exactly as being pointed out also in the original introduction and presentation. That's precisely why we need a gender-neutral job evaluation in our organization. And because without this systematic approach based on a solid relevant criteria and factors, we end up relying on assumptions and preconceptions that systematically disadvantage the work traditionally done by women. That's the underlying reason for a job gender-neutral evaluation.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. That was really interesting to see the shifting, sliding perceptions with each new factor that was added on, and how that kind of changes perceptions. But then at the same time, I saw in the discussions that it's impossible to assess the demands without the job description, without the kind of the complexities of the reality. So that was very interesting, and I hope you all enjoyed taking that time to reflect and kind of think about what that would mean in practice. So now we're going to go through each tool in detail, starting with the preparation phase. And I'm really delighted to introduce now our expert, Helga Björg Ragnarsdóttir, who will explain what each tool does, when to use it, and some important points to keep in mind as you work through the process. Helga, please go ahead. You're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Georgie, and good morning to everyone from, at the moment, very stormy Reykjavik, Iceland. Like Georgie just said, I will now take you through the preparation phase of the job evaluation process. And we start by looking at tool 0, which helps us understand how gender bias can appear in every system, even those that are designed to be fair and gender neutral. This tool focuses on how gender bias can shape our perceptions of job value, often without us realizing it. The exercise we just completed gives an idea of how many factors we need to take into account when evaluating jobs. And assumptions about the value of jobs can change once they are examined systematically using the same objective criteria. That emphasizes the importance of a thorough gender-neutral job evaluation and classification. And identifying and preventing gender bias is particularly important for avoiding the undervaluation of women-dominated jobs, where biased assumptions can translate into lower pay grades in jobs which are typically done by women with very, very grave consequences. Tool 1 sets the ground for the job evaluation process. It guides us through a few steps. The first step is to set up a job evaluation committee to oversee the process, make key decisions, and to ensure objectivity. Doing that, you aim for a balanced representation across departments, job levels, and genders. The next step is to coordinate with worker representatives or trade unions. They bring valuable insights from workers' perspectives and help keep the process transparent and fair. Then outline your project, set clear objectives, define which jobs will be evaluated, agree on a realistic timeline, and identify the resources you'll need. Finally, communicate clearly with workers about what's happening and why. Explain that the process evaluates jobs, not personal performances. Open communication builds trust, reduces anxiety, and encourages participation. And it is also essential to train your team on gender bias in job evaluation, which is covered in Tool 0, like we mentioned before. For example, how gender bias can undervalue skills linked to women-dominated jobs, or overemphasize factors such as physical effort over emotional or psychological demands. The toolkit provides a template for the project outline, which you can adapt to your needs. This template helps you cover all the essential elements of the job evaluation and classification process from the start. Tool 2 focuses on gathering job information. At this stage, you collect the data you will use to evaluate jobs accurately and fairly. The first step is to gather existing information. Many organizations already have job descriptions. However, they may be outdated or incomplete. Review the information you have and identify gaps. Next, depending on your organizational capacity, you will need to generate new insights through interview and questionnaires. Both methods have advantages. Interviews allow for a deeper exploration and clarification, but they are more time-intensive. Questionnaires can reach more people quickly and provide standardized data, but they sometimes miss nuances. So many organizations use a combination: questionnaires for all workers and interviews for selected roles or to clarify specific points. The toolkit provides detailed guidance on both, as well as more simplified approach for small organizations. The final step is to create job profiles. These profiles should clearly describe what each job requires in terms of skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. The toolkit provides templates you can use for questionnaire and interview guide. They have been designed to capture the information you need to be able to so you can conduct a gender-neutral job evaluation and classification in the best manner possible. In the toolkit, you can also find sample interview and questionnaire invitation and the job profile template itself. Before we move into the actual job evaluation tools, we need to take a look at the factor and sub-factor plan, which is the heart of the job evaluation framework. The plan is organized hierarchically. At the top level, we have 4 main factors required by the Pay Transparency Directive. These are, like you've heard before, skills, responsibility, effort, and working condition. Each factor is then broken down into a more specific sub-factors, and each sub-factor has levels ranging from 0 to 5, describing increasing degrees of demand or complexity. What makes this factor and sub-factor plan gender neutral is not only that it covers elements found in both women and men-dominated jobs, but also that each factor and sub-factor is defined and illustrated with examples to help you spot and correct hidden gender biases in how different jobs are valued. When developing the plan, we made sure that no important aspects of work were left out, especially those often missing from traditional job evaluation manuals. For example, alongside physical skills and effort, the plan also recognizes so-called soft skills, such as social and psychosocial skills, communication, and emotional effort. These are the kinds of skills or demands often invisible in jobs typically done by women, such as customer service, care, or teaching. Even within the classical factors, such as physical skills, the plan looks beyond physical strength, which we associate often with jobs in constructions, for example, to include manual dexterity and precision, skills which are essential in detail-oriented work, such as food processing or healthcare. Similarly, responsibility is understood in a wider way. It is not just about managing large teams or big budgets, but also about everyday responsibility for people's well-being, coaching colleagues, caring for patients, or teaching children. This approach ensures that the value of every job is assessed fairly and fully, taking into account the complete range of skills, efforts, responsibility, and working conditions across all roles. You will use the factor and sub-factor plan as your guide through the job evaluation process, so get to know it well.
Thank you so much, Helga. Thank you. So now that we have that foundation locked in place, now we're going to move to the job evaluation tools. Giovanni, the floor is back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So tool 3 is designed specifically for micro-organizations, so those organizations with fewer than 10 workers. This tool uses what we call a graduated factor comparison method. First, the tool helps you to understand the method. You need to familiarize yourself with the factor and sub-factor plan and create a short list of sub-factors most relevant to your small organizations. Ideally, you would use all the sub-factors, but you could just select those that help differentiate jobs in your specific context, typically between 5 and 8 of them. It's key, though, to ensure that you include at least one sub-factor for each of the 4 core factors and criteria. A critical point for microorganizations is to ensure that you do not exclude sub-factors that are more common in women-dominated jobs, such as psychosocial skills or emotional effort, even if they seem less obvious at first sight. As with other tools, start by collecting key information on the jobs. Then you will need to evaluate your job against the selected sub-factors. For each job and each sub-factor, you assign a level from 0 to 5 based on the descriptions in the factor plan. Again, the Excel spreadsheet for Tool 3 will help you to record your job evaluations and calculate the scores automatically, creating a classification of jobs in your organizations. So jobs with similar total scores are grouped together into pay grades. Based on that, you create a simple pay structure. We will now show a short video to demonstrate how to use the web toolkit to evaluate jobs as a micro-organizations.
Before evaluating jobs, make sure you understand how the graduated factor comparison method works. You assess each job using 4 gender-neutral job evaluation factors: skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. Each factor is broken down into sub-factors with levels from 0 to 5. All are explained in the factor and sub-factor plan. Familiarize yourself with the method and the factor and sub-factor plan. The micro-organization case study can also help you visualize how the process looks like in practice. Ideally, use all sub-factors to evaluate the jobs in your organization. But if that's not realistic, choose the ones most relevant to your organization. Use at least one sub-factor from each of the 4 main factors. Only add new sub-factors if they're objective, gender-neutral, and clearly defined. The decision tree in the toolkit can guide you. For each job, look at the job profile. Choose a sub-factor. Read levels 0 to 5. Select the level that best matches the job. Add a short justification. Then move to the next sub-factor. Take the levels you have assigned for each sub-factor. Add them up to create a total score for the job. Before finalizing your results, review the ranking and ask yourself, does the ranking make sense? Have undervalued skills been recognized? Are any women-dominated roles unexpectedly low? Adjust scores if you need to, based on evidence. Once the jobs are ranked, group them into pay grades. Set a midpoint salary for each grade, then define the minimum and maximum around it. If a job is undervalued, consider adjusting its pay upward. Also review bonuses, allowances, or benefits to check they're based on objective, gender-neutral criteria.
Fantastic. So let's move on to the next tool, Tool 4. This is designed for small and medium-sized organizations. It uses a pair comparison method, which compares jobs directly with each other. So jobs are compared in pairs using the criteria from the factor and sub-factor plan. First, the toolkit will help you understand the method and review the factor plan, just as we did in Tool 3. Then you prepare information about jobs using the job profiles you created. This is a distinctive feature of Tool 4, since you do pair comparisons for the job evaluation process. This means that it involves comparing jobs, comparing each job role with each other, one pair at a time, to determine which job has greater overall requirements. Each pair comparison is made using, again, agreed upon objective criteria, such as the skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. Every job in the group is compared directly with all others. For example, if there are 5 jobs, there will be 10 comparisons, as each unique pair is evaluated once. The job judged to have the higher overall requirements in each pair is awarded a point. After all comparisons are completed, the points are totaled for each job. The resulting scores produce a ranking of jobs, from those with the most to the least extensive requirements. The toolkit again provides detailed guidance on how to make these decisions, document the process, and avoid gender bias. Then, the toolkit will guide you through creating or reviewing your pay structure. The principle here is similar for all the pathways. The toolkit will help you to compare each job's ranking with its current basic pay to check whether the pay aligns with the job value. In the toolkit, you will find guidance on how to spot inconsistencies, especially with women-dominated roles, and use comparison scores to group jobs and classify them into fair pay grades. The toolkit also explains how to create your pay structure by setting a midpoint for your lowest grade and building the rest of the structure using a balanced progression factor. This is typically between 1.2 and 1.5. Finally, the toolkit will guide you in defining the minimum and maximum pay around each midpoint, allowing workers therefore to progress within the grade over time while keeping pay ranges fair and transparent. Finally, like in all the pathways, you need to adjust periodically because jobs and your organizations, of course, evolve with time. An important consideration, though, for the small and medium-sized organizations is that you need to ensure fair comparison. It's easy to unconsciously compare jobs based on who currently holds the job rather than on the actual job requirements. The factor plan helps you to keep you focused on the objective criteria. Now we will show another short video to demonstrate how to use the web toolkit to evaluate jobs in the case of a small and medium-sized organizations.
Before you start evaluating jobs, make sure you understand how the pair comparison method works. You compare 2 jobs at a time and decide which one is more demanding overall based on 4 gender-neutral factors: skills, responsibility, effort, and working conditions. Each factor is broken down into sub-factors, all explained in the factor and sub-factor plan. The more demanding job in each pair gets 1 point. Once all pairs are compared, you add up the points to create a ranked list. The factor and sub-factor plan gives you a full overview of what to consider. You can add new sub-factors if needed, but make sure they are objective, gender-neutral, and clearly defined. The decision tree in the toolkit can guide you. Now you're ready to evaluate. Using the job profiles, compare each pair of jobs, 1 pair at a time. Give 1 point to the more demanding job and write a short justification based on evidence. Continue until all pairs are evaluated. When all comparisons are complete, add up the scores and look at the ranking. Check for patterns that may suggest gender bias. Once the jobs are ranked, group jobs with similar overall demands into the same grade. Set a midpoint salary for each grade, then define the minimum and maximum around it. If a job is undervalued, consider adjusting its pay upward. Also review bonuses, allowances, or benefits to check they're based on objective, gender-neutral criteria.
Fantastic. So let's move to Tool 5. Tool 5 is the standard approach for gender-neutral job evaluation. It is suitable for large organizations or those organizations which have more capacity and resources. This is the most comprehensive method and is based on what is called the analytical point factor method. While it requires more resources and time, at the same time it provides really the most detailed and defensible results for complex organizations. First, you need to make sure that all the job evaluation committee members understand the method. This means that job evaluation committee members must thoroughly familiarize themselves with the point factor approach and the factor and sub-factor plan, Everyone needs to interpret the factors and levels consistently. The supplementary Excel for Tool 5 also provides guidance on each factor, subfactor, and level. The total score for each job is 1,200 points. You may decide to add additional subfactors if the standard plan doesn't capture all the relevant aspects of the jobs in your organizations. For example, if you have a highly specialized technical roles or unique working conditions, you might need to define additional subfactors. The toolkit again allows you to do so and guides you through this process, ensuring any addition remains gender neutral. The Excel files again allows customization on the weighting of the subfactors. The key is to ensure that the total number of points for all factors remains 1,200. Every subfactor has a weight assigned to it, but not every subfactor carries the same weight in the final score. The weights, in fact, reflect how much your organization values each main factor and its subfactors. For example, you might assign responsibility 35%, skills 40%, efforts 15%, and working conditions 10%. But of course, all of these must add up to 100%. Within each factor, subfactors are also weighted. The default weights in the Excel spreadsheet are carefully designed to ensure gender neutrality, but you can adjust them if needed for your organizational context. However, if you do choose to adjust the weights, you must be vigilant about the potential gender bias. The toolkit provides guidance on this. For example, if you significantly increase the weight of physical strength, whilst reducing the weight of interpersonal skills, you may inadvertently devalue women-dominated jobs in your organization. So any changes to weights should be thoroughly discussed and justified by the job evaluation committee and consulted with worker representatives. Now we come to the actual evaluation of jobs. This is where you systematically assess each job, every subfactor. First, the evaluation is made individually by each job evaluation committee member. Always use the job profile information, not your perceptions about the person currently in the role. Look for gender biases, even if you believe women-dominated and men-dominated jobs are valued equally in your organizations. Gender bias can be subtle and unconscious. Avoid, therefore, falling into the trap of rating all skills well, simply because someone performs well on one factor. And do not let the current pay levels, in particular, influence your scoring. Then the committee convenes. You discuss each job together and compare the results of individual review. For each job, you work through every subfactor, assigning a level based on descriptions in the factor plan. The Excel spreadsheet again automatically calculates weighted scores and provides a total score for each job. Once you have completed the job evaluation, it is essential to review and analyze the results carefully. The toolkit provides several ways to visualize and check your findings. You can see the results table that lists all jobs with the total scores, broken down by factor. This allows you to see at a glance which job scored similarly and which factors contributed most to each job's value. The Excel spreadsheet will create some graphs for you, allowing you to view results by job groups, by the gender composition of jobs, for instance, or by the individual jobs. These visualizations help you identify potential issues. For example, if you see that women-dominated jobs consistently score lower than men-dominated jobs with similar requirements, this may indicate some bias in your job evaluation, and this needs to be addressed. You should look for patterns such as whether jobs with similar scores have similar pay, whether gender-dominated roles are appropriately valued, and whether any subfactors show unexpected patterns that might suggest bias.
Okay, so just a quick check-in. Thank you so much for staying engaged as we have walked through tools 3, 4, and 5, and the 3 different methods for conducting the core job evaluation. So we've covered a good deal of ground at this point, but before we continue with the remaining tools, we just want to do a quick check-in with you all and bring you into the conversation. So Helga will take us through this next interactive part.
Yes, we are now going to launch a quick poll. You should see the poll appearing on your screen now. The question is, where can gender bias still enter the process even after jobs have been evaluated fairly? Select all that applies, and I will give you about 30 seconds to respond. Well, as you can see, we have some variety in our answers. Will we get like a final result or? Yeah. Okay. All of these options are correct, as you may be aware of. Okay. Should we carry on now? Yeah. Yes, like I said, all of these options are correct. So it's actually it's an evidence of how closely we have to monitor our biases in the whole process, through the whole job evaluation process. Your answers, should you switch to the slide again, or? Yeah, like your answers highlighted, gender bias can enter the process, job evaluation process, at every stage, even after going through an evaluation process designed to promote gender equality. So the bias training is crucial for every participants in the process. Let's continue with the remaining tools and focus on how results from the job evaluation and classification process are translated into job titles, into job descriptions, and the ongoing monitoring. We now move to what happens after you have completed the job evaluation. Tools 6 and 7 guide you on using the results to adjust job titles and descriptions and on tracking progress over time. After completing the job evaluation, Tool 6 helps you use the results to address gender-biased language in job titles and job descriptions. The job evaluation process may have revealed that certain jobs are described using stereotyped or gender-biased language. For example, job titles might use unnecessarily gendered terms, such as waitress rather than server, or policeman rather than police officer. As well, job descriptions might emphasize certain skills in men-dominated jobs, whilst downplaying similar skills in women-dominated jobs. And the tool it provides guidance on how to review your job titles and descriptions. If you have identified gender bias, you should change gender-based job titles to neutral equivalents. You should ensure job titles describe the roles, responsibilities rather than the worker itself, and replace subjective adjectives with neutral descriptors. Then you should frame tasks based on skills and responsibilities and recognize both hard and soft skills equally. Finally, Tool 7 focuses on tracking progress and planning follow-up actions. Job change, organizations evolve, and you need to ensure your evaluation remains current and fair. The tool guides you on through 4 key steps. First, check your job evaluation regularly. Set a schedule for reviewing the job evaluation, typically every 2 or 3 years, or whenever significant organizational changes occur, such as restructuring, new job creation, or significant changes to existing roles. Then align HR policies with job evaluation results. This means ensuring your recruitment, promotion, and pay review processes reference the job evaluation framework. Make sure to communicate the process, results, and next steps to everyone. Workers need to understand how their jobs were evaluated and how this connects to pay decisions. Transparency builds trust and helps address concerns before they become grievances. The checklist in the tool is designed to help maintain transparency and fairness over time. Before we conclude the toolkit walkthrough, I want to briefly mention tools 8 and 9. Tool 8 provides guidance for trade unions on advocacy. It covers what trade unions can do to promote gender-neutral job evaluations, how to overcome resistance in organizations, and how to formalize process through a collective agreement, and how to review a job evaluation methodology to ensure it's gender neutral. Tool 9 offers guidance for workers on approaching equal pay conversations with employers. It helps workers understand what they are entitled to know about how pay is set and how to use what they have learned to have informed discussions. And it helps to make sense of the information they receive to maintain ongoing conversation about equal pay. These tools recognize that achieving equal pay requires collaboration between employers, workers, trade unions, and worker representatives. They provide practical guidance for constructive engagement, helping all parties work towards fair and transparent pay systems.
Super. Thank you so much, Helga. Thank you so much, Giovanni, for walking us through these tools very concretely, very succinctly. Thank you so much. I hope our participants also appreciate the clarity and the clearness of the slides as well. So now we're going to bring these steps to life. We're going to watch a short video showing how a fictional large organization applied the standard gender-neutral job evaluation approach in practice. So please enjoy.
Saveurs Européennes is a large food service company. 275 workers, a wide range of jobs. The HR team noticed something. Kitchen roles, mostly men. Event coordination and admin roles, mostly women. Different jobs, different pay levels. But were jobs being valued objectively? Or were gender biases finding their way in? Sarah and her team had questions they couldn't easily answer. The company was growing, and like all EU employers, Saveurs Européennes had to meet the requirements of the Pay Transparency Directive. HR wanted a fair, transparent, and gender-equal pay structure that workers could trust and managers could explain. They decided to carry out a gender-neutral job evaluation and classification. First, Sarah started by bringing people together: a line chef, a service supervisor, an event coordinator, a union representative. 5 people. Different perspectives, gender balanced. This was their job evaluation committee. The committee's mission? To assess every job objectively. They created a plan, 6 months, clear goals. They got on the same page. What counts as a skill? What makes a responsibility significant? And they communicated with workers from the start. Next, the committee gathered information. They didn't just look at job titles or old descriptions. Workers filled out questionnaires about their job roles. They also talked to people. A head chef described managing teams and food costs. An event coordinator explained juggling client relations, budgets, and last-minute crises. A kitchen assistant talked about safety protocols and inventory management. The committee documented everything. Then came the job evaluation. The committee used a structured approach based on 4 main objective and gender-neutral criteria. Skills. What knowledge and abilities does the job require? Responsibility. What decisions and accountability come with it? Effort. What physical, mental, and emotional demands does it involve? Working conditions. What environment and pressures does the job face? For each criterion, they looked at multiple aspects: problem solving, communication, supervision, financial oversight, even the less visible demands and soft skills, like emotional effort, organizational skills, pressure to maintain standards. The process had structure. The support tool helped them organize information, job details, gender patterns, the requirements of each role. The committee assigned levels to each job based on its demands and requirements. Then, they summed it all up to get a total score for each role. The tool didn't make decisions for them. It supported transparency and consistency. The results led to action. The tool helped classify jobs with similar scores into groups. A new pay structure emerged. Fair pay grades, based on objective criteria, not assumptions or stereotypes. They also reviewed job titles and descriptions for gender-biased language. Language matters. For Saveur Européenne, the benefits were clear. Clearer job roles, stronger trust between management and staff, better retention, a pay structure they could explain, defend, and follow up on. The EU-wide guidelines on gender-neutral job evaluation and classification, designed as a step-by-step toolkit, are not just for large organizations. The toolkit offers different pathways to fit your organization's size and complexity. The principles remain the same whether you have 10 workers or 100, and with dedicated tools for workers and trade unions, it can support everyone in the organization to champion equal pay for work of equal value. Every workplace can get there, with a clear process, the right tools, and everyone on board, step by step, job by job. The toolkit turns EU equal pay principles into action. Ready to explore how this could work in your organization? Visit the toolkit today and discover the pathway that fits your needs. Because equal pay isn't just good policy, it's good for everyone.
Okay, super. I hope that video provided some further clarity in a step-by-step way with some kind of real world, even if it was a fictional example. I hope it brought all the elements that we were discussing today into something quite tangible and concrete. So thank you so much for staying with us through this entirety. We've reached the Q&A session where, as I said, we're going to address your specific questions and concerns about implementing gender-neutral job evaluation in your organizations. You can drop your questions here in the Slido and we'll respond to as many questions as possible during the webinar. But like I said, for those that we can't cover live, we'll be providing written responses in a Q&A sheet after the session, and then that document will be uploaded onto the webinar page. Can I get all of our experts to turn on their cameras so that we're all in a gallery view? It's great to see that the Slido has been so buzzing with activity. So I'm going to kind of sweep through our experts and put into question a few of the queries and fan them out to our different experts. Okay, so let's start off with a question that I imagine is on many people's minds, especially those thinking about implementation. Agnieszka, can I ask you, based on the questions that I see, I'm kind of aggregating the overall question based on multiple people's questions. Are these EU guidelines actually mandatory, and how do they fit in with what already exists nationally?
Yes, so the short answer to this question would be no. What is the legal obligation for employers is to ensure that they respect the principle of equal pay for equal work or work of equal value between women and men. And the directive does not prescribe a specific tool for that purpose. What the directive does, it mandates the use of the 4 criteria that you heard a lot today: skills, effort, responsibility, working conditions. So the guidelines that we present today are, of course, a voluntary tool for employers to use, but it is a practical, a ready-made resource that aims to support organizations in a process of establishing non-discriminatory pay structures. So we aim to help organizations to meet the requirements of Pay Transparency Directive. And of course, we do not prescribe that there is a single methodology, but employers are also free to adapt and combine elements included in these guidelines in a ways that best suit their context, as long as they ensure that they comply with the principle of equal pay and the pay structures that they have that are based on gender neutral and objective criteria that are required by the EU law.
Yeah, now you mentioned adapting the guidelines. How can we adapt or tweak the guidelines to suit our own systems as a follow-up to that?
Yes, so first of all, I also would like to tell that we aim to translate these guidelines into all national EU languages, so it can be used at national level. And I think, as I said, you need to see these guidelines rather as complementing the system that are already in place, not replacing them, and providing some common principles that can be adapted to national context. So important distinction, I think, when you do any modifications for you or for any employer to remember is to remember that there is a difference between objective pay systems and gender neutral pay systems on the other hand, as objectivity, it's not always guaranteeing like non-discrimination.
Okay, super. So I want to now move on to how it truly works in reality. Elena, I've seen multiple questions that pick up on a concern we often hear. This is quite resource heavy, or at least it sounds like it's quite resource heavy. So how does the toolkit make gender neutral job evaluation more realistic in practice? Elena, would you be able to answer this question for me?
Thank you so much, Georgie, and many thanks to all of the participants for their very active participation in Slido today. Indeed, there are several questions highlighting that the process might be costly, that it might be time-consuming, that it seems complex. And I just want to reiterate that we heard this concern both during the research and in the consultation phase of the toolkit. And this is why we have designed the toolkit the way it is. So practical, flexible, and intended to be usable with existing internal resources. So on the point on flexibility, as mentioned, all of you saw the 3 tailored pathways. The toolkit allows organizations to choose the method that best matches their size. But not only size, that also their complexity and their capacity. We are all very aware that a bakery, for example, does not have the same resources and capacity as a multinational company. So this is why the approach that it's put forward in these updated guidelines, in the step-by-step toolkit, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There are simplified methods for micro, small, and medium-sized organizations, yes, and there is the standard approach suitable for larger organizations. But the key point is that regardless of the pathway the organization chooses, still the framework is the same. We're relying on the 4 gender-neutral factors which are included in the directive: skills, efforts, responsibilities, working conditions. And throughout the whole process, we make sure that it's free of gender bias. Another, when it comes to the complexity and the burden, we've also frequently heard, including in the questions here, that the process imposes significant administrative effort. On our side, how we try to address this concern? First, we build on what the organization already has. So we build on existing job information. We provide also ready-made templates. There is step-by-step guidance throughout the whole phase, from preparation to act to follow-up. And there are also the Excel tools that help to automate the scoring. All of this means that organizations do not have to start from scratch. There are case studies which show the examples, which show how these tools can be used in practice, as mentioned, and you already saw some parts of the video tutorials as well. So the whole intention behind this is to make sure that the process is as manageable and as possible. And then one more thought when it comes to cost. Here, it's also useful to mention that we made an effort to ensure that organizations do not need to rely on external experts, because the way the toolkit is designed is that it's intended to be implemented by organizations themselves using their existing capacity and build on what they already have. So this is why tool 0 is understanding gender bias, making sure that we cover the process from the get-go and everybody is on the same page. I've noticed also in the question there was a point: what if my HR colleague is not aware of gender bias? Check out tool 0. This can be a good start to initiate the process. So yes, and when it comes to time, and when it comes to the commitment that's needed, it's also important that it's a very time-bound process, which means that it's not continuous. You can plan your work around the specific moments in preparation, evaluation, and follow-up, but the effort still remains manageable and proportionate to the organization's capacity. And one final point, if I may, this is to encourage to view gender equality not just as a burden, but as an investment. This is an investment that supports talent, that supports staff engagement, and includes and leads to a more positive work culture.
So you've covered the fact that no matter what organizational size we're working with, this toolkit is kind of Teflon coated for them. I want to look at a different angle as far as the different sectors. How can the toolkit be adapted and cross-pollinate between different sectors?
So the toolkit, as it is designed, can be used in all sectors, in both public and in private sectors. As we mentioned, the job evaluation framework is based on the 4 criteria as required by the Pay Transparency Directive: skills, effort, responsibility, working conditions, and they apply to any type of work, regardless of the sector. So the way it's designed, it's to be used within a single organization, but what is key is that the framework is there: skills, effort, responsibility, and working conditions.
Okay, super. Okay, so just based on other questions that we see in the slide, I want to widen the lens a little bit now and look at the broader system around organizations. Marianna, if I could pivot on your expertise, what role can collective bargaining really play in advancing equal pay?
Thank you for that question. In our research, we've made really a reflection around this, and we've pointed out that there are 2 mechanisms with which collective bargaining, collective agreement can really push forward the principle of equal pay for work of equal value. And one is vertical, because as we've said before, 60% of workers are covered in Europe by a collective agreement. So vertically, when there is a sectoral collective agreement with a gender neutral pay structure in place, it really trickles down to the companies that apply that pay structure. So we have really a spreading of the principle throughout it. And then there is also an horizontal way, because different sectoral collective agreements can talk to each other. We can have the same kind of principle applied, the same kind of structure, the same kind of evaluation with these 4 principles: skills, responsibility, working condition, effort. And then this equal pay for work of equal value can be spread between different sectors as well in matters of principle. However, we've also really reflected on the fact, are these collective agreements really currently embedding this kind of principle? And we've seen that while some are working around implementing gender neutral pay structures, some are have not done that reflection yet. So that's why the Pay Transparency Directive also really calls onto the role of social partners in order to implement this principle really throughout. And I think it is important that we underline an overall, warning for everybody wanting to go into this is that an objective pay structure is not necessarily a gender neutral one. It really goes beyond that, and it really requires an extra step of reflection that it's very important to have.
What does Eurofound's research say? What actually works?
Well, I think that really starting as the toolkit does from a reflection on what is gender bias, what does it mean, where is reflected, it's really switching that perspective that it's what's important and where it starts working, and having also conversations in companies involving everybody. It's what makes a difference in truly applying the principle and truly making this gender neutral pay structure something that it's moving us forward.
Okay, well, let's look at the toolkit itself now with some of the questions that are talking about more practical decision points that organizations face. Helga, if I could ask you, if an organization is kind of on the edge of a size threshold, how do you decide whether to use tool 4 or tool 5 as an example?
Thank you. Tool 5, the standard pathway, it offers the most robust approach. So an organization on that threshold, it's recommended to take the standard approach, particularly if within the organization there are more than 15 job roles. And also, just if companies or organizations are anticipating growth, choosing a more robust approach is a smart way to go. Just to avoid having to do the same process over again later, and sometimes in the future. So I would say lean towards the standard approach, but if there are very few roles, then of course it's appropriate to maybe do the tool 4.
Okay. And how do we make sure things like invisible tasks or soft skills like mentoring or emotional labor are actually captured and valued? Because it's quite hard to kind of track and trace. How do we overcome that hurdle?
Like we all know, I think in practice, soft skills and emotional effort and stuff like that, it has been overlooked in valuing jobs, of course. In a way, because they have been associated with natural or personal traits rather than acknowledged for involving training or practice or expertise. And the toolkit is designed to recognize these skills and assess them on a basic level, just like we assess the more common factors such as physical effort, line management and other things. The factor plan is designed to help ensure that these demands are recognized and then assumed. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then let's turn to a question on consistency, especially within a specific context of use, because I think this is where the robustness of the methodology really stands up. Giovanni, could you tell us, how do you make sure different evaluators are scoring roles in a consistent way? That sounds like a big challenge, actually.
Thank you. There are some differences across the different, pathways depending on the organization size. But I think that what is common to them in this respect is what is in the you will have seen during the presentation of the toolkits, the very first initial phase, which is called the prepare phase. And I would emphasize that phase in this respect in addressing this question, because in that phase is really where those carrying out the evaluation, regardless of the size of the organization, whether it is a large committee like in the large organization case, or a small group of individuals for smaller organizations, really the first preparation, the prepare phase, allows them the time and the toolkit gives them all the resources to really familiarize themselves with the process. So they all start in a way, they get very close, they have the same tools, they understand the same process in a similar way, and that generates consistency. And I would emphasize in particular the familiarization that needs to take place before the actual evaluation with understanding the factors and sub-factors plans. And that, I think, is where, and the levels that there needs to be. That's where consistency among participants, among evaluators can take place. I would also emphasize possibly, among the differences, three aspects that I think, are important in that preparation phase. One is, of course, to use evidence, to use the job profiles, information, and not perceptions on, about the person who is actually now in the particular moment carrying out that job. These are criteria that I think every single evaluator should keep in mind. So use information, use evidence in the job profiles rather than who is actually doing the job. Another aspect I think that is common and the evaluator should always have in their mind and in the process, and which an aspect which will generate consistency, is actually trying to always have a mindset which is about looking for gender biases everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like, you're hunting for them. So look for this gender bias, even if the jobs in the organization are actually valued equally, whether male-dominated or women-dominated jobs are valued equally, always look for gender bias, hunt for them. Have that mindset that you think that there is unconscious. We know that there is unconscious bias and implicit bias almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So hunt for them. Okay.
I like that, hunt for the bias.
Yeah, and this is kind of a mindset that helps to, if everyone has that approach, generates the kind of consistency. And the third probably common trait, common characteristics is about, as we mentioned, not to be led by, who is doing the job, the pay level of the job at the moment. So how much a job is paid at a particular moment, a particular time, shouldn't drive your evaluation of the job. So I think these three elements, these three characteristics about the preparation, the familiarization with the factors, with sub-factor plan, and then this kind of three characteristics that that evaluators should have in their mindset about, use evidence all the time rather than perceptions, hunt for gender biases all the time, and do not be led by the existing pay levels. I think if these aspects are consistently implemented, they should ideally, ensure consistent evaluation as far as possible.
Let me present, though, a worst case scenario, because it could happen. Even with all this preparation and consistent implementation, what happens if evaluators just can't agree? How do you pivot around that? Like when unilaterally they just don't agree?
Yes, and I think this is particularly relevant in larger organizations
where
you have a larger number of evaluators. But it's very interesting. I mean, the toolkit is extremely helpful in this respect, because you will see that there is a process, a well-defined process, and a range of ideas and exercise and advice that the toolkit provides to manage the committee that evaluates. And of course, again, an important aspect here is that use evidence. So the committee members, even if they evaluate and they don't agree, there is a dialogue. The toolkit provides a dialogue, a forum, through which this disagreement may be shared, reasoning, use of evidence can be used. An important aspect, I think, here is the dynamics of the meetings. And again, the toolkit provides, very helpful advice on how to manage group dynamics and to reach consensus. And that is very much about, avoiding groupthink, or allow participation to show their reasoning, to contribute individually, and ensuring that the discussion is develops fairly and progresses towards reaching a shared understanding of the job and the agreement. So it's very much about having in place processes through the committee meetings that generates discussion, uses evidence, goes back to the evidence again for each factor and sub-factors if there is not agreement, and that discussion generates consensus. Of course, this will take a bit more time, but is needed when you have a large group, a large number of committee members and a group. So it's very much about managing, using evidence all the time, going back to the evidence by factor and sub-factor plan, and generate, managing the dynamics of the meetings in a way that generates consensus.
Okay. I actually want to ask a technical question here that I see. Agnieszka, if you would be able to answer this question, do we have to consider working conditions, and can there be other factors influencing pay going beyond 4 criteria?
Yes, so directive refers to mandatory 4 criteria that were discussed today at large, but of course it also mentions the possibility to use in the job assessment, if appropriate, other relevant criteria that can be taken into account. Taking into account any other factors is of course optional. And the intention of the directive was to ensure the necessary flexibility for employers, so they're able to account for very specific circumstances. In principle, I believe it should be exceptional that such other factors would be needed to be taken into account. You will see that in the toolkit, the factors are divided into many sub-factors. And I think there are 3 elements I wanted to mention when for employers, if they add additional factors. First of all, would be to avoid that there's double counting between certain job characteristics that are named differently. Second, what Giovanni just said, that you should avoid that you add factors that relate rather to the job holder and his or her personal performance than to evaluating job. And third, you also need to take into account the existing case law of Court of Justice. So basically, if you take into account any additional elements, you need to be able to first justify the importance and relevance of these elements. These elements need to be gender neutral and unbiased, and they must also be applied in proportional way. So you cannot adjust pay just by whatever level. The case law of Court of Justice is very clear that it must be proportional as well. So I would say that these are the elements that we need to consider.
Thank you so much. Now that you mentioned pay, I have another question here that I want to leap onto. Is this toolkit only for organizations with a gender pay gap problem, or also for organizations that believe they are already fair? Elena, could I ask you to take this one?
Thank you, Georgie, for the question, and thank you to the participants for asking this question. The simple response is that the toolkit is can be used by both. So it's not only for organizations that have identified their gender pay gaps. It can also help organizations who believe that they're already fair. And in this case, it can be good to be used because it can verify and show that jobs of equal value are treated equally while using the objective gender neutral criteria. So in that sense, the toolkit can work both, in a sense as a validation tool, but also to identify any remaining issues that have been invisible and bring them to the surface. Because as Marianna also rightfully highlighted, an objective pay structure is not necessarily a gender neutral pay structure. And while mentioning Marianna, now Georgie taking over a bit, there was a question in the slide where we can see the benefits of gender neutral job evaluation that Marianna was talking about. So the toolkit, both in the PDF and the web version, they're already available on EIGE's website, along with joint policy brief that we work with Marianna and our colleagues at Eurofound, which highlight the benefits of gender neutral job evaluation. So highlights what are the benefits for employers, for workers, and for social partners. All of the resources are already available on the website. They're free for use, so please feel free to use them.
There's a question that provokes the notion of how does the toolkit relate to other frameworks? So how does the toolkit relate to the European skills, competencies, qualifications and occupations framework? Maybe Giovanni, you can answer this question.
Yes, the key message here is that the toolkit is not built as a ESCO-based system, and therefore does not rely on these European skills, competencies, qualifications, and occupational codes in order to assess to evaluate the jobs and whether there is work of equal value within the organization. Of course, the organizations that carrying out the gender neutral job evaluation may use these ESCO codes, but at the very beginning, in identifying the job profiles, as a reference point for job descriptions. But the actual job, the actual evaluation, and the resulting, pay grades that come out from applying the toolkits that we have presented today should be based on the factors, the 4 criteria that are established in the toolkit, and that they come as well, as we're seeing from European regulations and directives. So the toolkit is different from these. The ESCO codes can be used to help start as a reference point to identify job profiles, but the actual evaluation does have to rely on the criteria that are well specified and identified in the toolkit.
Can users adjust the weights? And if so, what do they need to consider?
The ESCO codes cannot be used at all to adjust weights. The original reference point about skills, competencies, qualifications, and they can be just used at the beginning in identifying job profiles, but that's it. After that, the evaluation of jobs needs to be carried out following the criteria identified depending on the toolkits and the size and the pathways and the size of the organizations. But the ESCO codes don't come into place at all in that, because the toolkit is primarily a job evaluation and classification system resource at the organizational level. So for the specific needs of the organization that is carrying out the job evaluation, and therefore is not across sectors, across organizations. It's specific to the organization, so it needs to reflect the needs of the organization, as has been emphasized many times today. Okay, so the ESCO codes are really initial. They provide some help to identify the job profiles at the very beginning.
Okay, thank you. And actually, I have one more question related to codes. That's how much time we have left for. So, Helga, can I ask you, how does the toolkit consider the fact that international standard classification of occupations codes are used for classification of work of equal value between women and men? As a final question.
Was this question maybe aimed for Elena? Would be better to answer that one than me.
Up to you both. Toss up whoever wants to ask this question or answer this question. Elena, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. So same with the ESCO code. That's not the purpose of the ESCO codes as well. They're more as a statistical reference than to serve as a reference for job evaluation. For us, what is key is to remember the framework that we're talking about, which is the four criteria. This is what we need to consider. In this case, we couldn't use the statistical codes for the purposes of the job evaluation. On the question on the weights that you mentioned, if I could also add, this was the previous question that that was shared with Giovanni. Also, what we have to consider here when it comes to the weights, yes, the toolkit allows the possibility to adjust the weights that are already included, but it also gives concrete guidance and suggestions on how to do so if needed, making sure that it's done without gender bias. So this is the core. If there is a need, yes, weights can be adjusted, but still the cornerstone of the whole process is that it's gender neutral, and the toolkit provides the relevant guidance for that.
Okay, super. Thank you so much for all these excellent questions. I know I can still see questions in the chat that we haven't had time to address, but as I said, please know that we're going to be responding to these afterwards, and they will be available on the webinar page. So as we close the webinar today, I just want to emphasize a few key points that have already been made, but just to reiterate in a concluding form. First, the true impact of gender-neutral job evaluation is that it helps build workplaces that are fair, transparent, and respectful, where everyone's contribution is properly recognized. And therefore, this leads to stronger teams, better morale, and higher performance. So the updated EU-wide guidelines presented today provide guidance and ready-to-use templates to support every step of that way. So the case studies show that organizations of all sizes can successfully implement gender-neutral job evaluation, whether you are a micro-organization or a large corporation. There is a pathway designed for all of your needs, and we've made sure to equip you with clear guidance and an abundance of examples and templates to make that process manageable and smooth. So firstly, remember, this is to use a very common phrase, it's a journey, not a destination, and regular reviews ensure your system remains fair and effective over time. So to wrap up, you will receive today's presentation slides and additional resources to support your implementation efforts. On the screen, hopefully, there you go. You can see a QR code. We would greatly appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. Please take a moment to scan the code with your phone and complete our very brief feedback form. Your input really helps us to improve future sessions and better support your needs. The form should take no more than a few minutes to complete. So if you don't have time to fill it out at the end of the webinar today, we will send the link after the webinar so you can complete it at your own convenience. So on behalf of EIGE, the European Commission, and the entire project team, thank you for your participation and engagement today, our expert panel here as well. Your commitment, once again, to gender equality and equal pay is vital for creating inclusive workplaces across the EU. So with that, we wish you all the success in implementing gender-neutral job evaluation in your organizations. That concludes the webinar, my moderation. Thank you so much and have a very lovely rest of the day. Take care.